Imagine a house in a garden. The paint is flaking and the chimney's cracked and the uncut grass is wild. But ignore all that. Look here instead, at the giant wisteria with a trunk as thick as your arm, its purple flowers dripping against the old stone wall. Look at the swing hanging from that ancient oak, those cherry trees planted in a circle around the house. One of the trees is so close to a window that in summer, when it fruits, the girl who lives here can reach out to pick the cherries. Imagine that. Picking cherries from your bedroom window. Hello everyone and welcome to Faber Booktime. My name's Natasha Farrant. I'm here to tell you a little bit about myself and about two of my books, Children of Castle Rock, that I was just reading from, and Voyage of the Sparrowhawk, which publishes very, very soon. So, when I was young, and for as long as I can remember, I have always wanted to be a writer. Now, I don't know if you remember first learning to read. I don't mean learning to read letters and words, although obviously that's really important too. But that moment when those letters and those words stop being squiggles on a page and turn instead into a story. I remember that moment when it happened to me. I remember it really, really clearly. I was at school on a busy road in London, sitting at my desk. I remember there was a window and there was sun coming in through the window, and on my desk there was a book. And I was reading and, was following the letters, following the sentence with my finger like you do when you're not quite confident yet about reading. And suddenly something clicked. Something magic happened. And I wasn't at my desk in my classroom in the school on the busy road in a big busy city. I wasn't there at all anymore. I was in a garden of a castle in the 19th century in France, in a different country completely, with three children who I didn't know but who were going to become my friends. And I used the word magic, and I really mean it. It was like magic for me. This idea that you could be in two places at once. You could be sitting at your desk in a classroom and also in a castle in 19th century France. And I just wanted more of it. I think it's from that moment that I just knew that I had to have that magic in my life, always. And that whatever I did when I grew up, that magic would be a part of it, and that I would be a writer. So one of the questions I get asked the most often when I go to schools by other children is, where do I get my ideas? Well, I get my ideas from lots of different places, from people, conversations, from places, more and more from nature, the natural world, our beautiful planet, our precious, wonderful planet, from things that happen to me, but also from other writers and other stories. Now, after that moment in the classroom, I read and I read and I read. I read all the time. And one of my favourite writers when I was younger was a woman called Enid Blyton, who wrote what seemed to me at the time the most brilliant adventure stories. I longed to live in an Enid Blyton book. I longed to have adventures like her heroes and heroines, to go to a school with a swimming pool that was filled by the sea, to have my own boat that I could row to my own island and where I could camp out for night after night after night with my cousins under the stars. And so one day, after I'd written lots of different sorts of books, I decided to write an adventure story, a bit like the stories of Enid Blyton. I think it's better, personally, but I'm biased. I decided to write an adventure story of my own, and the first one was The Castle of Children Rock that I just read to you about. So Children of Castle Rock is about 3 children, Alice, Fergus and Jessie, who are at boarding school in Scotland, who run away because they're on the hunt for something precious that's gone missing. I mean, they're not the only people who are hunting for this precious thing. And though they're in one of the most beautiful places on the planet, the Highlands and Islands of Scotland, surrounded by mountains and eagles and puffins and wildflowers and beautiful, beautiful beaches, there are also storms. Storms which might sweep away your tent. Tides which might cut you off from the mainland. It's very, very dangerous. Now, Voyage of Sparrowhawk is also an adventure story. Different setting. This is set in 1919, just after World War I. The whole world is trying to get back to normal after this big trauma. So imagine the pandemic, but bigger and much, went on for much longer and even more traumatic. So the whole world is trying to get back to normal. But for Ben and Lottie, my hero and heroine, that's just not possible. They're both orphans. She's living with her horrible, horrible uncle and aunt who are making her life completely miserable, and he's living alone on his boat, the Sparrowhawk. But the police, he's only 12, so the police aren't going to let him live on his own for very long. So they both really need to get away. And they both decide for various reasons that where they want to go with their boat is France. Because they have different reasons for wanting to go to France, which I'll let you find out. But one night, under cover of darkness, they creep away with their 2 dogs and some stolen money in Ben's boat to the Sparrowhawk. And they set off with the idea that they're going to go across the sea on the Sparrowhawk. So I'm just going to read you a little bit from Sparrowhawk to give you a feel for Lottie and Ben and who they are, what they're like. So Ben's just come back to the Sparrowhawk and he's expecting to find the boat completely empty. But it's not. There's a girl in there. A girl he doesn't know yet, but who he's going to become really good friends with. She stood before him in the cabin, flushed from running, the skirt of her old-fashioned sailor suit dirty and torn, her long hair unravelling from its braids. Slung across her body, she carried a satchel. The satchel was wriggling. Ben, doubly winded by his fall and the disappointment that Lottie was not his brother Sam, could only stare. Elsie growled, her golden eyes fixed on the satchel. The satchel jumped. "It's no good," announced Lottie. "I'm going to have to let him out. You'd better hold on to your dog." Quite composed, she sat down on Ben's bunk, pulled the satchel's shoulder strap over her head, and laid the bag down beside her. Ben finally recovered the power of speech. "Let who out? What are you talking about?" His voice was squeaky with indignation. "Who was this girl? How dare she intrude like this on his boat? I don't even know what you're doing here." "Shh," Lottie begged. "You must be quiet." Ben wanted to say that this was his boat and he would make as much noise as he liked, but now he was curious. Lottie was undoing the satchel's buckles, making tender cooing noises as she did. Elsie quivered, stepped closer. Ben slipped his fingers through her collar, craned forward to look. "It's all right," Lottie whispered into the bag. "No one's going to hurt you." Ben and Elsie watched in astonishment as a small black nose emerged from the satchel, then a slim toffee-coloured snout. The nose twitched. A thin paw appeared, then another, followed by surprisingly robust shoulders and the rest of the head, with eyes like black marbles and ears like enormous bat wings, which would have made Ben laugh if the creature hadn't been so very pitiful. "It's a dog," he said unnecessarily. "He's very thin." "That," said Lottie darkly, it's because he's been very badly treated. Elsie began to whine, soft little cries Ben recognised as words of comfort, and he relaxed his hold on her. Still whining, Elsie advanced on the little dog, who shrank back, flattening his enormous ears. Elsie pressed closer, sniffed him all over, then rather bossily began to lick him clean. "They've made friends!" Lottie beamed, then turned to Ben. "Isn't that wonderful? I'm Lottie, by the way. I live up at Barton Lacey." "I'm Ben," said Ben. "I live here. You still haven't told me what you're doing on my boat." Lottie, he noted, didn't look the least bit repentant. "Do you know a man called Malachi Campbell?" she asked. "Short and red, with a nose like a potato." "Everyone knows Malachi Campbell," said Ben impatiently. "He's Great Barton's most famous crook. Look, I don't know where this is going, but would you mind just stepping up on deck and looking to see if he's out there? If he's not, I promise we'll be on our way. I have to get home soon anyway. It's very important I'm not late, especially today, but Malachi Campbell is chasing me." This was not how Ben had imagined his homecoming. He'd been looking forward to reclaiming the Sparrowhawk, unpacking, making her cosy again for him and Elsie. This was annoying, but also interesting. He leaned forward. "Why is Malachi Campbell chasing you?" Lottie grinned. "Because I stole his dog." So that is Lottie and Ben, and if you want to find out what happens to them, and indeed what happens to Alice and Fergus and Jessie and Children of Castle Rock, you'll have to read the books. So before I go, I'm going to set you a task to practice your imagination and to get into the magic of doing your own storytelling. I want you to imagine a boat, any boat you like, just the boat that you would most long to have. So I want you to imagine a boat, and if you like drawing, maybe draw a picture of it. You don't have to if you don't want to. Maybe draw a picture of it, and then write a short description of the boat. And then I want you to think, where do you want to go on the boat? Where would be the most exciting, the most wonderful place to take that boat? And then maybe you could start thinking about what adventures you would have on the boat. Who knows? It's all up to you and to your imagination. Have fun. Bye.